interesting.
But
yeah, I mean, it's probably a lot easier to say he's guilty than to be like, well, now I have to decide what to do with it.
Exactly.
Nobody wants to do that.
Exactly.
Well,
so
some people want it.
mornings are better with a warm beverage, even for Latter-day Saints. Meet Postum, the ideal coffee alternative and proud sponsor of This Week in Mormons podcast. Spotted on the coffee aisle at Smith's Grocery or at your local nearby store. Can't locate it? No worries. Order it at postum.com. Explore delicious recipes to tailor your Postum experience. Start your day off right with Postum.
Hello, welcome to This Week in Mormons, the TWiM Sisters edition with your hosts, Arianne Smith
and Tiffany Hales.
Real life sisters.
Oh, we are
and
here.
Sisters in the gospel.
Sisters in the gospel. We're here for the month of May.
We're here for May. And to start off, Tiffany's making me try another thing, but don't worry, it's not like tomato sauce cupcakes.
No. As you are aware, we are sponsored this year by Postum. And so last month when you and I recorded, I made you a hot beverage, the Cocoa Postum.
And I fell in love with it.
You kind of freaked the freak out.
To my own shock.
Yes.
I loved it.
Yes. So I wanted to try something different this month. And so I have not tried this myself. I just thought, this will be a fun beverage. We'll make it. We'll try it. We'll see what it's all about. Now, of course, we are not coffee drinkers because we're active members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. That's the beauty of Postum. It's not a coffee beverage. It's a coffee alternative. But have you heard of iced coffee? I'm sure you have heard of iced coffee.
Yes.
So tonight we have an iced Postum.
Iced Postum.
So we are trying Postum on ice. And so here's what I did. I went online to get some recipes for iced coffee because, of course, I've never made iced coffee. So I was like, okay, how can I translate this into Postum? And I found a vanilla iced coffee with cake batter foam. So that is what I made. So before you try it.
Foam. That's why we frothed it.
That's why we frothed it. Before you try it, I want to explain to our listeners what I did. So I started off with probably about 6 ounces of water, added the teaspoon and a half of Postum, mixed that up, added the ice in, and then in a separate cup, I took half and half. The recipe called for 2%, but you didn't have 2%, so we used half and half. I added half and half sugar-free vanilla syrup, vanilla coffee creamer, and cake batter flavoring.
And we frothed it.
We frothed it with your little frother, and then you put that on top of the Postum.
Okay.
So let's give our iced Postum a try and see if we like it.
Okay, let's try.
I like it.
Okay. It's not bad.
No.
No, this is my first time trying the regular Postum, which tastes more coffee-ish.
Yes.
Than the chocolate one.
It does.
And I do not like coffee-flavored things. But this is less strong than most coffee flavored things.
Exactly.
It's like a hint of coffee flavor. It's not real coffee flavor.
Well, and I like the vanilla in there.
Yes, the vanilla is good. Okay, I like it.
Okay, one of the reasons I picked this is because I thought the vanilla would go really well with the Postum. Plus, it had that cake batter flavoring. And I have never thrown that cake batter extract into anything that I haven't absolutely fallen in love with.
Okay, I really like it.
Okay.
This is the second one you've given me that I'm like so surprised that I like it. And I like it cold.
I know.
Because I don't usually like warm stuff. That's why I was so surprised last month.
Yeah.
Because I don't usually like hot chocolate. I like cold beverages.
It's
delicious.
And with the half and half in here, this is going to have a fair amount of calories. If you swapped out and used like a 1% or a skim milk and your vanilla syrup was sugar-free.
Right.
So the coffee creamer had some calories in it. So, and Postum is really low calorie. Like it's about 10 calories for about our 6 ounces. So
hardly any sugar.
It would kind of be a fun summer beverage.
It's just something different.
It's something different. Exactly.
Okay.
All right.
Look at that.
Look at that.
You've won me over.
Okay.
And this is making up for you forcing me to eat weird Jell-O and tomato soup cupcakes.
Very true. Guilty as charged. Okay. Well, I don't know what I'm going to come up with for next month, but I am definitely going to come up with some new Postum concoction for next month.
She's on a mission.
I'm on a mission.
To feed me Postum every month.
Exactly. In a new form that you're like, okay.
Okay. So.
All right.
Quick life update.
Yes.
I have to report back on my Young Women's fundraiser because I think I mentioned this last month.
I believe you did talk about it.
I'm assistant girls camp director. The girls really want to go river rafting this year. We've never done that at least since I've lived in this ward. But in order to river raft, you need more money.
That's very true. River rafting is not cheap.
And this is kind of, because you join, once you're a camp director, you join the Facebook groups. You get the buzz on what everybody's doing. So this is kind of a trend right now in fundraisers is cleaning trash cans. Oh. And we gave our YCLs a choice. Like, we need to raise some money if we want to do this. Mm-hmm. We can do something for Mother's Day, but then we're going to have some expenses, or you can clean trash cans and we get to keep all the money. All it is hard labor. No upfront expenses. And I was super proud of them. They chose. They were like, we want that cold, hard cash. Let's clean the trash cans. So trash can cleaning day came this week.
Okay.
We set aside 3 hours to do it the day after Memorial Day, which is trash pickup day.
Okay. So after people have got their trash has been
the day emptied. Their trash got emptied, we say, leave your trash cans outside. We will come between 1 o'clock and 4 o'clock.
Okay.
With our pressure washers. We just need a hose hookup and a power hookup.
Okay.
And so we had people sign up on like a Sign Up Genius, or they can call and text. We had like 82 trash cans.
Oh, dang.
And we charged $10 a can.
Okay.
And we got some very nice tips.
I was going to say, did you get some tip money?
And we raised over $1,100. Oh. And now we get to go river rafting. And I have to say, these girls busted their butts. I was so proud of them. It was not like them sitting around and the leaders doing the work. Yeah. Like, I helped them. My group most groups had like 3 girls and 1 leader and 1 pressure washer and about like 5 or 6 houses.
Yeah.
And so of course I helped them like kind of learn on the first house we went to. And after that, they just took over and I was just there to like supervise and make sure everything went well. They worked so hard. It was so disgusting.
All my trash cans are horrible.
The worst was like the green yard waste.
The yard waste.
It smelled like a pasture.
Yeah.
We all smelled like just like garbage cans when we were done. It was so nasty, but they did not cringe. They just got right in there and did it. I was so proud of them. And it was a hot day too.
Yeah,
it was about like 88 degrees.
Well, at least they had water to cool off with.
We had water. And at the end, they got to like go straight from there swimming at one of the leaders' houses.
Nice.
I was joking that like maybe she should put a little extra chlorine in her pool after we came and swam.
That's hilarious.
But it was like a great fundraiser and great experience. And I was just so proud of the girls. Nobody whined. They were tired and getting a little cranky towards the end, but overall they did amazing. So.
And that is great. So 3 hours, $1,100. Yeah. That's an awesome fundraiser. Yeah. Without really a ton of prep work.
Right. Not a ton of prep. It wasn't too hard to do. It just takes some.
Who doesn't want their trash cans cleaned?
Yeah.
The trash cans are nasty.
Yeah. The ward was very receptive. I think they appreciated something that was actually useful versus like a fundraiser where like, well, I guess I better do that to support the young women.
Exactly.
This was
were like,
yes, I will have you clean my trash cans.
Now I support the young women and I get a fresh, clean trash can. Mm-hmm. Oh, that's awesome. Well, my church update, I should say, because on a personal level, all I've been really doing is working. And then my husband and I are in the middle of a kind of a massive redo, remodel, revamp of our yard, which is more on him than me. But this coming Wednesday, we have what's called our Over 60 luncheon. So our stake once a month does a luncheon for all of the sisters in our stake that are over 60.
Yes.
And so this month is our ward's turn to be in charge.
So you're in charge.
So we're doing a garden party. And so we're going to do little like tea sandwiches.
Oh, cute.
So my assignment over the next couple of days is I got to figure out which 4 tea sandwiches we're going to do, the ingredients, and how to get everything done. So I am counting down the activities until I am hopefully released. If I make it through this one, I got one more activity to go.
You're on the home stretch.
I'm on the home stretch. That assumes we get released when we think we're going to get released. If not, I'm going to be pretty bitter.
That is a big assumption. I'm just going to say. Things happen.
I know. But like I said, I'm kind of on the countdown. So I'm like, okay, I got to do 2 more activities. If I can make it through 2 more activities, I'm good.
Well, I wish you luck with that.
Okay. All right. Shall we do some news stories?
We should. It's a big news week.
Huge news week.
We were quite happy to be on the schedule for this week.
Yes, we were. In fact, I don't even know if we'll get beyond the first 2 stories, but we're going to try.
No, we'll do our best.
Now, if you are a longtime listener of this show, you know that I always save the Mormons behaving badly segment till after we finish the news. Except when the Mormons behaving badly segment is so big that you have to lead off with it, i.e. like when we did Tim Ballard back in September. The big news this week, and if you don't know it, either you live outside the country and you don't care, which is probably really true. If you live outside the country, you don't care. But if you live anywhere in the Intermountain West, especially the Mormon Belt, this is a big story. Chad Daybell was convicted on all counts. So he was convicted of murdering his wife. He was convicted of murdering JJ, and he was convicted of murdering Tylee, plus a whole bunch of insurance fraud. There were 9 counts against him, and it was a unanimous verdict.
And no one was surprised.
No one was surprised. So this trial began on April 1st. It is now the 31st of May, so we have been in trial for literally about 9 weeks at this point in time.
2 solid months.
2 solid months. The first week was jury selection, and then, it was testimony and everything. The verdict came down yesterday. Now, there have been a couple of interesting things. I'm going to talk about the verdict, and then I'll talk about the sentencing phase that happened today. And then I'm just have a few side notes on things that I have found interesting here and there.
Okay.
So the jury got the case yesterday. Well, they finished closing arguments and instructions to the jury on Wednesday. And so at that point in time, the jury became sequestered. And so every night the jury was allowed to go home up until the time they started deliberations, so they were given the case. So Wednesday night, they got sequestered. They spent the night in a hotel. They got up Thursday morning. They started deliberating. It took them 6 hours to reach a verdict, which I thought was pretty quick. I didn't know if we'd have a verdict on Thursday.
How fast was Lori's? Hers was really fast.
Hers was really fast too. But hers didn't have any defense. At least John Pryor put on a defense. And so I was kind of surprised at how quickly the verdicts came back, given literally the mountains and truckloads of evidence that was presented to that jury. I think the prosecution had almost 70 witnesses over the course of several months, and the defense had maybe about 8 or 10 witnesses. I didn't keep track. Anyway, so the verdict comes back. He's guilty. And then because this is a death penalty case, they do not release the jury, and they immediately go into what's called the sentencing phase, because the jury has to determine, is he going to get sentenced to death for his crimes?
Oh, I didn't realize the jury was deciding that too.
Yes, the jury is deciding that. So the jury decides if he's going to spend life in prison or if he's going to get the death penalty. Normally in Idaho, a judge does all of the sentencing, and juries do not do sentencing unless it is a capital case, and death penalty is considered a capital case. So that's why there was a sentencing phase. So the judge gave the jury a lot of instructions yesterday. They were still sequestered. And so they went back to the hotel last night. So this morning, they didn't start taking testimony in the sentencing phase till it was pretty late in the morning, like 10:45, almost 11 o'clock. I understand that maybe they had some sort of technical difficulties in getting the equipment up and going, is kind of what I understood. So for the sentencing phase, what the prosecution does is they bring in victims, and victims get to make a victim impact statement. So we saw and heard from I shouldn't say we saw, because in Idaho, if you are a victim of a crime, they will not post your face in the courtroom feed. So you can hear what the victim's saying, but you cannot see their face. They turn the camera. So we heard from a litany of witnesses, some of which we've heard before, some of which we hadn't. We, of course, heard from Kay Woodcock, who is J.J. Vallow's grandmother. We heard a lot of witnesses from Tammy Douglas Daybell's family.
Right.
Her father came. He was one of the first witnesses to give a victim impact statement. His was very short and sweet. It wasn't very long. Several of her brothers, her sister-in-law gave a victim impact statement. There were 2 of her siblings that just my heart just was wrenching for them when they were testifying. Her sister, Samantha Gwilliam, that's her only sister. There were 3 brothers, 2 sisters. They were very, very, very close. And she gave a very impassioned victim impact statement talking about just the impact that this has had on her personally, the impact that this has had on her family, all sorts of things, and just how awful this has been. And then her oldest brother, who I believe is named Michael or Matthew Douglas. I missed his first name. I know it started with an M. I thought it was Matthew, but then I saw something later today that maybe it was Mike. Anyway, he's the oldest sibling, and he got up and testified about how gut-wrenching this has been for him as an older brother not being able to protect his little sister, and just how it has impacted him emotionally. It impacted him at work. Just impacted like every aspect of his life as this horrific crime unfolded. Then, of course, there was Tylee Ryan's aunt who testified, and then Lori Vallow's son, Ryan, testified. We've heard from him before. So it was about 1:30 when the prosecution finished up with all of the victim impact statements. Then at that point in time, Chad was given the opportunity to do what's called an allocution. Chad could speak to the members of the jury if he wanted to. Now, you recall, Lori spoke with the judge.
And that was cuckoo crazy.
It was cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs crazy. You know, she was just like, yeah, I didn't do anything wrong. I don't know what the problem is. I mean, just nutso. He chose not to make any statement.
Okay.
And John Pryor does not have the opportunity to bring his kids in to make any sort of statement to say, hey, don't put my dad to death. I suppose they could have made a statement through the prosecution, because technically they're victims. I don't know if the prosecution would have let him make a statement if they're saying, don't put my dad to death. He didn't do anything.
So do you think that's unusual for him to not say anything? It probably goes both ways a lot. Huh?
Yeah. I mean, he's maintained his innocence this whole time.
So he's not going to all of a sudden flip and be like, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Didn't mean to lead everybody down the wrong path. So then about 2:00, the case goes to the jury to decide death penalty. Now, with how quickly they came back with their verdict of guilty, I thought, I had placed a bet by 4:00 we'd have a sentencing verdict.
Especially up against the weekend.
Exactly.
They want to go home.
Exactly. They've been there for a long time. They're now sequestered in a hotel, and 4:00 came and went. That was my guess. And there was no verdict.
Nothing.
5:00 came and went. 6:00. I mean, I am just continually refreshing my phone going, when are they going to have a verdict? Finally at 7:50. So they've been deliberating for 6 hours. They've been deliberating the sentencing phase just as long as they've been deliberating the guilty phase. Finally, at 7:50, they say, yeah, we're going to go to the hotel for the night, and we will resume again tomorrow morning. So
I hadn't heard that. So yes, so they can pick it up tomorrow morning. They don't have to take the weekend off.
No, well, if they took the weekend off, they'd be stuck in the hotel,
right?
Because they're not allowed, because they're sequestered at this point in time, to go home.
Right. So they'll go back tomorrow. Everybody has to go back.
Everybody has to go back tomorrow, which means the judge goes back. The lawyers are all there. All of the victims who are in the courtroom waiting to hear this are there. The court reporter, everybody who was there all day.
So it'll definitely happen tomorrow, right? It won't go into Sunday, will it?
I don't think it will go into Sunday. If they have a full day of deliberation tomorrow, and they still haven't reached a verdict, because they have 2 choices. They can either find that there's a whole bunch of different mitigating their circumstances. I was going to read it here. They can impose the death sentence if they find that the crimes were especially deprived, heinous, or cruel, or that they meet one of the other aggravating factors detailed in state law. And so if they find that the crimes meet those, then they can impose the death penalty. If they find that the crimes don't meet those, then the fallback is life in prison. So anyway, here's my theory.
That's probably really hard.
Yeah, this is Tiffany 101. Again, when we get interviews with the jurors after this is all over with, because I'm sure at least one of the interviewers or one of the jurors will likely get interviewed by Nate Eaton from East Idaho News. I am guessing one or two of those jurors is having a really hard time imposing the death penalty. And I bet there are several jurors who are very passionate about this. If there was ever a case for the death penalty, this is a case for the death penalty.
And it has to be unanimous?
It has to be unanimous. So
interesting.
But
yeah, I mean, it's probably a lot easier to say he's guilty than to be like, well, now I have to decide what to do with it.
Exactly.
Nobody wants to do that.
Exactly.
Well,
so
some people want it.
Yeah, you read the online comments. There's a lot of people who take him out and shoot him tomorrow, voluntarily. So that's kind of what I'm thinking. I'm thinking there's one or two holdouts that are having a hard time probably imposing the death penalty, and that's where they're at. And how that plays out, I don't know. It very well could be. They were probably smart to quit when they did today. Everybody, it's been a long couple of days. They can go back to the hotel. They can get a good night's rest. Things do always look different in the morning. So
what happens if they can't agree?
I think if they can't
Does the
agree,
judge break the tie? Or?
I think if they can't agree, then it goes to life in prison.
Okay.
Because they all have to unanimously agree to the death penalty.
Sense.
And if they have reached an impasse where they're not going to all unanimously agree to impose the death penalty, then he gets life in prison. So anyway,
okay.
So it in some ways it wouldn't surprise me if we have a verdict within the first couple of hours tomorrow, just because sometimes you just need a good night's sleep and just to clear your head, and you wake up in the morning, you're like, okay, this is where we
feel more confident, make a decision.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly.
Interesting.
And the other interesting thing about these victim impact statements is there's no cross-examination. They simply get to make their statement. Now, they can't say in their statement, hey, I think you should give him the death penalty. What they are allowed to say in their statement is, here is how this crime has impacted me. And they can talk about the emotional impact, the physical impact, the family relationship impact, just any negative associated with this crime and how it has impacted them. What's been really interesting in listening to these victims is there is such a division in the family. And here's where the battle lines are drawn. You have Chad's 5 kids that are still solidly in Camp Chad. He didn't do this. My mother died of natural causes. He didn't know anything about the kids.
He doesn't have one kid who's jumped ship?
He does not, to this point that we are aware of, have one kid that has jumped ship.
That was the most wild thing. That was the most wild thing to me, like when his kids took the stand.
Yes.
And I was like, how are they still on board?
Again, I want to deep dive this for a minute here, because I have a lot of thoughts on this. So he's got these 5 kids that are solidly in Camp Chad. At this point in time, no one else is in Camp Chad. The only group in Camp Chad is his kids. And what that has done is that has caused a division among all of the extended family members. So, for example, Samantha Gawilliam, Tammy's sister, when Tammy and Chad lived in Springville, they lived very close to each other. I think they saw each other every day. If not saw each other, they talked to each other every day. They were very, very, very close and basically raised each other's kids. I mean, they had kids about the same age, and they were constantly, babysitting for each other, going to different events, etc. Those kids, Chad's kids now are not having any contact with anybody in Tammy's family, not with their cousins, not with their aunts and uncles, not even with their grandparents. In fact, the grandmother, Tammy's mother, passed away just within a week or so after Lori Vallow was convicted last year, and Chad Daybell's kids did not even attend the funeral for their grandmother.
Wow.
Now, there was talk that maybe they participated or watched it online, but they have just cut off communication with that particular family, that side of the family. It has divided Chad's relatives as well.
Like his siblings?
And I think his parents have maybe come around at this point in time. There was a witness that testified when did she testify? She testified at the beginning of May because I did not hear her testimony. It was when I was in Utah for my daughter's graduation. So I had to go back and listen to it. Her name is Heather Daybell, and she is married to one of Chad's brothers. Now, she and his brother Matt, they all grew up in Springville. That's where she knew Chad's family very well. That's where she met Matt in high school. After they got married, they decided that they kind of wanted to move away, and they moved to Rexburg. They wanted to kind of be out on their own. And she said, Chad just really never gave me the warm and fuzzies. And there were some things about his family that caused her, some concern. She didn't like how the boys treated their mother. She thought there was a lot of disrespect. If there were ever marital issues, it seemed to always be the wives. The husbands were perfect. It was all on the wives. So they moved to Rexburg. They start their own life in Rexburg. Chad starts getting involved with Julie Rowe and all this life after death stuff. And he's making all of these prophecies. And Heather says, no. He was prophesying that there was going to be an earthquake in Utah. And that's why they moved to Rexburg, because Utah wasn't going to be a safe place for them. And the church was going to be relocated to Rexburg, was his prophecy.
Right.
So she knows that Chad and Tammy are moving to Rexburg. She says, please don't buy a house in my ward. What do? They buy a house in her ward.
Oh, interesting.
And he begins to charm everybody in her ward. And they start buying into these beliefs that he has. And she's like, do you not see this guy for what he is? And every time, I had so much sympathy for her, because every time she tried to raise this issue, she was gaslighted as, you're the crazy woman. There's nothing wrong with him.
Wow.
She was gaslighted by people in their family. She was gaslighted by church leadership. She was just really gaslighted a lot. And she, in an interview that she did, she talks about having a conversation with her bishop, and her bishop was like, "Oh, let's presume he's innocent, etc." And then they find the kids in the backyard, and the bishop's like, "Oh, yeah, I guess you were right. I thought you just didn't like him." And she's like, "No, he had issues from day one." So she did an interview with Hidden True Crime Podcast. It's a 3-part interview. It is completely fascinating. I encourage all of you.
I've heard that podcast. I've listened to a couple, but not that interview. So.
I would encourage everybody to go and listen. And the other interesting thing is Matt and Melissa released a podcast this week with an interview that they did. And they interviewed, let me pull this up so I can get the gentleman's name correctly. They interviewed this guy by the name of Taylor Hill, and he was in the Daybell's ward growing up. Matt knows him from BYU, Idaho. I think they're both in the political science department. I can't remember what the connection is. And his name happened to get mentioned in the trial in kind of a passing sort of a thing. It was a phone call, jail phone call that Chad and Lori were having with each other. And so Matt and Melissa did an interview with him, and he was really good friends with Mark, who was the youngest Daybell son. He was on his mission. Mark was on his mission when Tammy died. Taylor Hill was on his mission when Tammy died. They were very close growing up. He has nothing but glowing things to say about Tammy. He said, she was just very warm and friendly. And Chad was the one that was a little more aloof. He said he never heard any of the teachings from Chad, the out there ones. Everything he ever heard from Chad was mainstream Mormonism. But he said, I was a teenager. How much was I really paying attention? But his interview is very fascinating. Matt and Melissa asked him, do you still have contact with the Daybell kids? And he, to a limited extent, he still has contact with Mark. And they asked, how are the Daybell children being treated in the community? And he said, they've really, to a very large extent, been shunned in the community. Emma and Joe live in Chad's house, so they are in the ward that Taylor's parents are in, and apparently they no longer attend that ward because of how they've been treated, which I have some thoughts on this. I'm going to share my thoughts on this. I know, we are nearly a half hour into the show.
But what a conundrum. Can you imagine what a strain that would be on a ward? Just the whole situation.
Exactly.
How do you handle that? It's
because here is the conundrum how I see it. you want to be a Christ-like person, and you want to love and support and help your ward members. But the evidence in this case against both Chad and Lori, or as I like to call them, the dastardly Daybell duo, is so egregious and outrageous that, I mean, there's really no other conclusion one can draw. And I understand the kids not wanting to believe that their father is this awful person who engaged in this thing. But how long can you put blinders on to what reality really is? And I think it is so sad for them, the isolation that they are feeling. But at the same time, I'm like, well, some of that isolation falls on them because they are still choosing to have blinders on. I can certainly understand at first having blinders on and being, just like, no way my dad could have done this. I understand that at first.
Yeah.
But as time marches on and as the evidence marches forward, at some point in time, you kind of have to take those blinders off. And what I gathered from all of the extended family members is they would love nothing more than to have a relationship with these 5 Daybell kids. So if these Daybell kids can kind of take their blinders off and kind of say, okay, there was definitely something that happened here, and my dad did some stuff that wasn't cool, I think then that they could repair those relationships with their extended family. And I think they can still support their dad and still love their dad. I don't think the two things are mutually exclusive.
Yeah.
I think they can support and love their dad and have a relationship with him and still acknowledge he did a really heinous thing.
Yeah.
I think you can get to a place of that. I think it would take a lot of work and probably some counseling, but I do. I think it is a conundrum for them being in the community. One thing that Taylor did say in his interview is he said the youngest son, Mark, he's the only one that's not married. He didn't say where he was, but he said he is out of state going to college because he needed to remove himself from that environment. And I'm like, well, so far that's the smartest one I've seen.
I know. If I were them, I'd want to remove myself from this state also.
Exactly. I'd want to go in and file an application to change my last name.
Oh my goodness. How interesting. What a wild.
So, all right.
What a wild thing that has been.
I will close in ranks tonight and I think I've probably verbally vomited all of what I had pent up about the Chad Daybell trial.
After many, many years, this is kind of drawing to a conclusion.
It is. And so hopefully, in all likelihood, on Saturday, we'll have something to post on the TWiM Facebook regarding what his ultimate sentence is.
Right.
So, all right. But we do have other news this week.
We do have other news. The biggest of news this week in regards to the church is the first batch of songs from the new LDS hymn book is out. We've been waiting for these to drop. We knew they were coming at the end of May. So they dropped them, I believe, on Wednesday night. Or was it Thursday night? It was Wednesday night.
Well, we got them on Wednesday because somewhere on Wednesday when we got them, it was Thursday somewhere in the world.
Somewhere in the world.
Because technically it was supposed to drop on Thursday.
So they dropped the first 13 songs. As we know, they have been working on updating this hymn book for 6 years now. There has been delay after delay after delay, and it's going to be a couple more years till we have like the full book. But they have decided to appease the people. They will start dropping songs
digitally.
Yes.
Which I think is awesome.
And I think it's brilliant because when these songs came out, the world was abuzz and we all got on and listened to them. And I think we can take it more in small doses. Like I decided, I'm like, this is a better way. By the time the full book comes out, we'll have small doses of many of these.
And we'll probably know a lot of the new hymns because we've been singing them.
Yeah. Versus if the whole book came out, we'd be so overwhelmed we wouldn't even know where to start.
Yeah. Because isn't the whole book going to have somewhere between 450 and 500 songs?
450 to 500 songs.
That's a lot.
It's going to be a lot. And this is interesting that I did not know until this week. About a third of the book will be children's songs, while the rest will be for adults. Now, this fascinated me because I noticed right away on this list of 13 songs that they dropped that at least 2 were children's songs. And I was like, oh my gosh, we're putting children's songs in the hymn book, and I was thrilled because I thought one of them that was
we've
on the
always
list,
had some children's songs,
we've
but
always
only
had
about like 5 or 6.
Yeah, like less than 5.
Yeah.
And I thought, this is great. We should be singing more children.
Yeah.
Like there's some really good ones. And the one that was on the list that they dropped this week is I Will Walk with Jesus. Are you familiar with that?
I am not familiar with that.
It was one of, every year the primary has like a song of the year. And it's not in the primary book. It's like a newly written song
for the theme that goes with that year.
And so this one was, I think it was in the last couple of years because I was in primary.
So you learned it.
I was teaching primary. So yes, I learned it, and it is the sweetest song.
Okay.
And my mind was just not expecting primary songs to be on this list of hymn books. So when I saw it, I was like, yes, we should be singing that in sacrament meeting. It is a wonderful song about Jesus.
Okay.
Okay. So the list of 13, no surprise, come thou fount of every blessing. I'm just going to highlight a few. Probably most people have browsed the list.
Yes. And the other thing too I want to mention is if you go in your gospel library app, they have the songs there and they have people singing them.
So you can
listen and hear them and familiarize yourself.
So that's what I did right away when this dropped. I went through everyone. You did too, because we were texting each other. Did you see the songs?
Yes.
Another one that made the list, It Is Well With My Soul. This is a frequently sung at conference song. My husband was very excited about.
See, I don't recall hearing that at conference.
I Will Walk with Jesus. That's the primary one that I talked about. One that I really liked, never heard by me before, is As Bread Is Broken. And it's going to be a sacrament hymn.
There were 2 that they released that were sacrament hymns.
And I gave it a quick listen, at least parts of it, highlights. And I really liked it.
Oh, good.
And it's just written by a member. In fact, they interviewed her in one of these articles. And she just wrote it based on like her personal sacrament experience. Like that was kind of the inspiration for it. Okay. This one surprised me.
This one surprised me too. Tell them what the one was that surprised both of us.
Gethsemane.
I know.
Which has become popular in the past few years, but it seems more of a solo song.
Yes.
There have been like some viral videos with the little girl singing little girl,
her name isn't her name Claire?
Claire sang it. Claire Crosby?
Claire Crosby. That's right. Claire Crosby.
And that was probably at least 6 years ago.
Yeah, it was a while ago. She was very young when she sang it. And it was beautiful.
Adorable and beautiful. I was so shocked that
I was very surprised
and
by
my question is that going to be a sacrament hymn?
Oh, I don't know.
I mean, any song can be a sacrament hymn, right?
Well,
do they have a narrow? I mean, I know we have a section with sacrament hymns.
I think you have to pick from that section with sacrament hymns. I think, I don't know. Something tells me that that's like in the handbook that you have to, there's the section of sacrament hymns and you have to, because the sacrament is so sacred that you have to, there are approved hymns for the sacrament.
Right. Anyway, and then we got a couple Easter and a couple Christmas. What child is this? Which I always forget we don't have that.
I know.
It feels like we have it.
It feels like we should.
I guess we don't have it. Anyway, so just a few interesting tidbits on the hymns. They interviewed several. They did a big media event in Salt Lake where they introduced some of these. There were lots of interviews with people on the committee. They kind of gave the list of requirements that they were going off of. They want these hymns to increase faith in Jesus. They want them to inspire members and comfort members. They want to invite joyful singing in the home and church. And another thing that I thought was very interesting, like I said, the primary songs were included, and they interviewed one of the primary presidency that's on the committee. And so my first thought was, when they first released, I thought, oh my gosh, we're going to sing primary hymns in sacrament meeting. And then something else I was reading said about a third of them will be primary songs. And then I thought, are we getting rid of the primary songbook?
I think we're getting rid of the primary
songbook. All going to be together.
We are going to have one book.
And then I was thinking, oh no, but I do want to sing them in sacrament meeting. And then if they're putting them in a primary section, are we not going to? But they interviewed President Porter, who's I believe she's in the primary presidency, right?
I think
Am I getting this right? And she talked about how the primary songs are going to be in there. And she said, this will really reinforce and help and help us realize that the Lord wants to nourish every person he has invited to his meeting, and that includes children. So then I was like, okay, they do want us to use these in sacrament meeting, which makes me happy. And I love the idea that they're thinking about the kids.
Yeah.
Obviously, as a mom with kids, I love the idea. And she just went on and talked about like how amazing it would be to see a little 4-year-old singing their heart out in sacrament meeting because they knew the song.
Exactly, because they learned it in primary.
So I thought that was really cool. A couple of other interesting things to note. One of my very good friends is an organist in our ward and in charge of, she's very musical, church musical person. She is in a Facebook group with ward organists.
Okay.
So we went on a hike the day after this happened, and we were talking all things new hymns.
Oh, I love this.
Because of course she listened to them right away. Like,
yes.
So she said in her ward organist Facebook group, there was some guy that got on that was like, this list is kind of weird. And like, he was commenting on how this list sounded like, not like traditional hymns. These are like, solo pieces. And he kind of said a comment about like, what's next? We're going to have drums in sacrament meeting. And she said there were quite a few comments from fellow organists that felt the same way. They were alarmed that this was leading us down a dark path of drums in church, which personally, bring on the drums. I'm ready for it.
We had guitars a couple of weeks ago.
It was great.
Yes.
Okay. I have been waiting to see a guitar in our ward because I know that you can do that now, but nobody has ever done it in our ward.
We have 3 of our young men who play guitar, and they're actually very, very good. And I'm trying to think, was it Mother's Day that they did a song, that the youth did a song? I can't remember what they played it for, but the 3 guitarists accompanied the group that was singing, and they were excellent. They were absolutely excellent.
Yeah, I don't know why we're not seeing more guitars. I think it's slow to catch on, but hopefully we'll get there. Okay, then another interesting tidbit. My friend told me she listened to a podcast, and this was from several months ago. This wasn't current. It was like probably back in January because I went and listened. I'm almost through. I haven't listened all the way through, but the podcast is called For All the Saints. For All the Saints. It's an LDS podcast. And they interviewed a guy named Ray Robinson who works for the church. This is his title. This is fascinating.
Okay.
He is the director of experiences for the priesthood department. Doesn't that sound like a Disneyland job? You're the director of experiences?
Oh my gosh, that does sound like a Disneyland job. Okay, now I want to know, as a director of experiences, what do your job duties entail?
Well, apparently he's on the hymn book committee.
Okay.
Because that's why he went on this podcast. He was giving some insight as to how it was going with working on the new hymn book and some of the behind the scenes. And so they were asking him. And so he was talking on the podcast about how, they did a big survey and they asked members what songs you want to keep, what songs you want to get rid of, et cetera, et cetera. And he just talked about what a balancing act it is in this worldwide church to try to make everybody happy.
Very true.
And he said, on the Wasatch Front, the hymn In Thy Lovely Deseret is very hated. We've talked about this hymn before.
We've talked about this hymn. I personally like the hymn, but I have an emotional connection to the hymn.
You like it, but many people in the Western United States
feel very strong about it.
Do not love that hymn.
Yes.
But he said that, come to find out, it is very popular in Central and South America.
Get out of town.
They love that hymn.
Shut up. No way.
So, who would have thought, right? Why? How did that hymn catch on in South America?
Which means if that hymn stays in the hymn book, you're going to have a whole bunch of people in Utah going, Salt Lake, what were you thinking?
Anyway, he just shared that as an interesting tidbit about how they're trying to balance a worldwide, making everybody happy and offering something for everyone.
Fascinating. I never would have guessed that South America, they would love in our lovely desert.
I just want to know how this happened. Did some Utah missionary go out there 20 years ago and teach it to all of them and it really caught on or what? I don't know.
Fascinating.
I don't know.
Fascinating.
Anyway, the entire new hymn book is slated to be available in 2026 and available in 50 languages by 2030. But in the meantime, every few months, they will be dropping more hymns.
Which means we'll have more to talk about.
Yes. So the second most requested, which they've talked about after Come Thou Fount of Every Blessing, is Amazing Grace.
Yes.
That didn't show up this round, but we're expecting it will eventually. Right?
Exactly. So here is my question. How many wards this Sunday will be singing hymns off of the newly approved list?
I would venture to say in the United States of America, 99%.
Because we all have smartphones.
Yes. And because ward music people are on top of
That's true.
They are not messing around. They've had this date on their calendars for years. They have been waiting. This is what I want to know. What percentage of wards will be singing Come Thou Fount this Sunday?
I pondered that question on the Facebook page.
I also believe that will be 95% or above.
Okay.
I could be wrong. That's just my generic guess.
Here's the unscientific poll that we're going to do. Okay. So you and I are on the calendar to record again in 2 weeks for the month of June.
Okay.
And so that gives each of us 2 Sundays to see if new hymns pop up in our wards.
Okay.
And I think that we should ask some of our friends. In fact, maybe I'll even put it out there. Maybe I'll even put it out there on Facebook as a question on Facebook to say, please return and report this Sunday if your ward used one of the new hymns.
We need a Facebook and an Instagram post saying,
we do.
Put it in the comments. We want
to know.
We want to know which ones.
Exactly. Because I'm completely fascinated how this is going to be.
Yeah.
So, yeah. All right.
Anyway, I loved the list.
I loved the list
I was
too.
super impressed with all of them. There wasn't one that I was like, huh? They were all, I thought they were all amazing. So,
okay. Well, we're 45 minutes in and we got 2 stories down.
Oh no, we're going to have to cruise.
Okay. We may just have to hit the highlights. We'll cruise several of these.
For next story, out of Salt Lake City, a fire destroyed a historic Salt Lake church. This is a Wells Ward meeting house. It was one of those really old, beautiful brick Salt Lake buildings. It was already not in use because it got damaged in an earthquake in 2020, and they were slated to demolish it really shortly, within the next few months. And it caught on fire this week and pretty much burned down. Real bad fire.
Demolishment done.
So that made that job easier, I guess.
Exactly.
But sad to lose a historic building, but we were going to lose it anyways.
Yeah.
So
the earthquake took care of that for us.
Yeah. What's next?
Okay. With Memorial Day, we have a couple of kind of Saints at War stories.
Right. So apparently there is a project. I had not heard of this project before. Had you?
No, I hadn't.
It is actually called the Saints at War Project, and it's been happening for several years. A church history professor at BYU, Robert C. Freeman, has headed it up, and it's basically just they are taking history and getting accounts of saints all over the world that have served in military for their countries, not just United States, but various forms of military. They're recording the experiences, just the experiences they had, and then also any experiences they had related to faith. So it sounds like a really interesting project. There's like a pretty extensive list that they've put together of general authorities over the years that have served and in what capacity they've served. And they have some amazing stories from our prophet, President Nelson, which I always forget. He was a medic.
He was a medic in the Korean War.
And he was mostly stateside, but he did do a stint overseas, helping out in hospitals there.
Yeah, in a MASH unit. Only I don't think it was called a MASH unit. It was called something else, but that's essentially what
similar,
it was.
Yeah. And then they had a story from Elder Maxwell. And they also had a story from President Boyd K. Packer and his time in service. So, and when I saw this list, I was like, there's more than I realized. You forget that they had these experiences, some of them. Anyways, I think it's really great that they're preserving the history.
I love it. And our other war-related story is there is a new short film. It is 11 minutes long. It is called The Miracle, and I'm probably going to mispronounce this, at Gapyong. And this was a Korean War story. There were 240 soldiers from the Utah National Guard. They were the 213th Armored Field Artillery, and they ended up fighting a battle against 4,000 enemy Chinese and North Korean soldiers, and not one of them was lost. And so this 11-minute video is about that and kind of comparing them to the Book of Mormon story of the 2,000 sons of Helaman who fought to protect their families without losing a single life. This movie is notable because, first of all, President Dallin H. Oaks trained with the 213th Armored Field Artillery, so he knew the men in this unit. He was not part of this battle. And then, so he's featured in the film along with President Holland, because President Holland knew a lot of these men because they were from the St. George area. You can find this on YouTube on the Church News' website.
So this is produced by the church, this video?
It is produced by the church. It's an 11-minute film, and it's designed to be used in youth lessons, devotionals, and family gatherings. And President Holland, like I said, has some statements about it. And the overall message of the film is, and this is from President Holland, is that when we are true and faithful to the Lord, miracles of all different shapes and sizes and timing will happen in our lives. To the remarkable youth of today, I say, please, please be faithful. Please be courageous and obedient. Please trust in the Lord with all your heart, and I promise that he will direct you for good. So I have not had a chance to look at the video yet, but I do want to look at the video because it sounds like it's really cool. So.
Okay.
All right. Let's hit two more. I think we have time for two more before we get into having to wrap this puppy up.
Okay, I'll make mine quick. This is a very quick update on Real Housewife of Salt Lake City, Lisa Barlow.
Yes. Because we are super fans of Salt Lake City. Well, I should say I'm a fan. You are a super fan. You've seen all seasons.
She is a newly converted fan.
I am a newly converted fan.
Because we drew her back in.
Yes. Season 4 sucked me back in just as I was trying to get out.
So Lisa Barlow, as you may have heard, is probably the only one currently on there that is somewhat active in the church.
Yes.
But she sent us on a mission. During the last season, we saw the whole process of him getting ready for a mission. He has come home, but only briefly. I think we're thinking some type of medical thing.
Yeah, he had an incident. I think he's in Brazil. Is he in Brazil? He's in Colombia. He's in Colombia, and he'd had an incident when he first went out on his mission that he was hospitalized down there for a period of time.
Right.
And now he is home.
He came home mid-May.
They're calling it a short visit.
So she said he's going to get healthy, and he came home and he's going to go back out.
And we don't know what his medical issue was.
No, we don't know what it is.
Hospitalized
I don't know if they'll talk about it on the show next season. They probably will. I don't know.
I bet they will. And you and I were talking because they usually film during the winter months. They usually film in January, February, March. So they're not filming right now, but they haven't done a reunion episode. And you got to think that, probably she was talking about this missionary son a lot when they were filming.
Yeah.
And so probably they will have some sort of
they'll do a follow-up,
a postscript follow-up.
They'll do a follow-up.
He came home, he went back out.
But she's funny because I guess she had posted something on social media, and then she also followed it up with, "If anyone comes for my kids, I promise you'll regret it." Like speaking to the trolls because she knows,
Yes. Okay, you know what? I'm going to try and do two. There's two really good ones, and I can't pick between the two.
Go for it.
Okay, John McNaughton. This is a name we have not heard of for a while.
I forgot about him until this article popped up. I was like, oh yeah, the painter.
So for those of you who are not familiar with him or don't recall, he is the gentleman who paints these outrageous pictures of Donald Trump and turns Donald Trump into kind of this Christ-like hero.
Like puts him in with George Washington, like in the same, he paints them all together in the same picture, the founding fathers and then Trump.
And he is a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. His main source of income used to be landscape and religious art. He has abandoned that because he has tapped into this market for these Trump-like paintings. And between 2016 and 2020, when Trump was in office, things were going gangbusters. Mm-hmm. He's still making a fair amount of money, but he's not selling as many paintings, which he's blaming on Biden and the economy, because, painting is an economic.
It's a luxury
item. It's a luxury item, is what he said. What's really interesting in this article is I read this article and I am trying to determine, does he really buy into Trump and what Trump's political beliefs are, or is he exploiting this because he found out, A, there's a market to sell his material to the hardcore Trumpies. The left hates it, and so the left gives him tons of press.
He gets more press,
every time he does an outrageous painting. And so is he laughing all the way to the bank?
It's really hard to tell, because some of the things he says are so far out there that it makes me think, I don't think he really believes it. I think he's saying it for the publicity.
Exactly. And to go ka-ching, ka-ching.
And apparently the latest article said he's working on a new big one
that incorporates all sorts of characters.
Like about the Trump trial. It has Trump hogtied. And all the university protests, all kinds of things in it. So I don't know. I think he's stirring the pot to make it to the bank. That's my theory.
I kind of think he's stirring the pot to make it to the bank.
I don't think he really believes his stuff.
Doesn't believe his own press. I don't know. But he is smart enough to tap into that market and ka-ching, ka-ching to his bank account. So while I don't really per se appreciate his artwork, I am going to give him mad props for doing it and being successful. So, all right. My last one that I need to harp on is there was an article that came out on KSL.com that said Gen Z is deleting dating apps. Here's what Utah-based app Mutual is trying. So Mutual is an app that is based out of Utah. It is primarily targeted to members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. So they have a very niche market there. And so what this article is talking about is that Gen Zers really prefer to meet up in person, that they really don't like the online dating, and that has kind of fallen out of favor. And that they have a lot of anxiety as well because of the pandemic and being nervous about talking to new people. And so that's one of the reasons why they don't like these apps. And so the article also talks about, and I didn't realize this, that there's a lot of burnout with these dating apps, that they kind of take a lot of time and people scroll and scroll and scroll. Mm-hmm. And so what Mutual has found is people will be really active on it for a couple months and then they'll take a break. Mm-hmm. Whether that's they're taking a break from dating or they found somebody that they want to date, and then they'll reinstall their app and get back mm-hmm. on. So they're trying to streamline the swiping. They are verifying all users for safety concerns. They are also rolling out a new speed dating feature that will compress the sometimes exhausting experience of waiting for a match to reply. Now, I have never used this app. Mm-hmm. Here's what my understanding of it is. I could be completely wrong, so correct me if I am. You scroll through, and if you see someone you like, you say, hey, I'd like to be a match with you. And it sends that person, hey, mm-hmm. so-and-so wants to match with you. And they can either look at your profile and accept your profile, and then you can start talking, or they can hit the decline button. Mm-hmm. I believe that's how it works. So they're trying to speed up the process of if someone isn't responding to you.
Maybe let's all get on it this time.
Yes.
And you chat live for 5 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which sounds smart.
So anyway, they're trying to do some innovative things to keep those kids involved,
keep their business afloat,
keep their subscription to their app going, and meet and match up young Latter-day Saints for love.
Interesting. Okay.
All right. Well, shall we move on to our favorite things?
Yes, I was going to say, we already did our Mormon behaving badly.
Well, we led off with our Mormon behaving badly.
Okay.
So you go first, because I brought something. I don't know if it's my favorite thing, but we're going to try it tonight.
She's going to try. Okay, my favorite thing this month is a movie. It is the perfect date night movie. It's Fall Guy with not Ryan Reynolds, Ryan Gosling.
Oh. And a former member. Well, I don't know if he's
raised.
He was raised Mormon. Yes.
That's right. Oh, see, look, we even have a connection. And what's her name? Emily Blunt.
Okay.
It was so cute. It is the perfect date night movie. There's action, there's romance. It was darling.
Okay.
And I believe it's already out on video.
Oh.
So we saw it in the theater a couple weeks ago. But
okay.
All right. What's your?
Well, maybe tomorrow night I'll have to make my husband take me to it.
It was really cute.
Okay.
And amazing stunts, which were fun to watch.
Oh, okay. Mm-hmm. All right. Well, for those of you who tuned in last week when I recorded with Sarah Jorgensen, one of my favorite things that I talked about was the Twix cookie dough bars, and that I had gotten those. I had bought a bag of them in Utah, and my husband ate like 90% of them, and they were delicious. So this week when I was at the store, I saw a Milky Way that is a cookie dough.
This must be the latest trend.
I have not tried
cookie
this
dough
yet.
Trend.
So I thought that I would bring it tonight. We would open it, and you and I would try it here and see if it's a favorite thing or not.
See if it's a keeper. Because I have to say, the Twix. Keith and I tried the Twix one because you said it last week. So I was like, well, now I have to go get it. It was okay for me.
You didn't like the Twix one?
I think I like a regular Twix better.
Really?
I mean, it wasn't bad, but
okay. So it's got the nougat. It's got the caramel.
I don't see the cookie dough. Where's the cookie dough?
I don't see the cookie dough either.
This looks like a regular Milky Way, but it's delicious.
Yeah, this seems like it's a regular Milky Way.
There's no cookie dough to be found.
I don't know why they're calling it cookie dough.
This is a manufacturing mishap.
I don't know.
But it's good.
If you like Milky Way, it's good.
Maybe the nougat is supposed to be cookie dough flavored.
Yeah, the nougat tastes just like regular.
I think so.
Okay, yeah, I definitely pick the Twix cookie dough over the Milky Way. All right, well, that about wraps it up for us tonight. Hey, we're going to do a Patreon segment. Will you stick around for Patreon?
Yes.
We have a fun story we're going to talk about in Patreon. We are going to talk about the town of Snowflake, Arizona, which is a major manufacturing capital for the marijuana.
Who knew?
In Arizona, and Snowflake is highly populated by Mormons. So we are going to talk about the conundrum of marijuana and Mormons and how we feel about all of that.
Mingling in the town of Snowflake.
Mingling in the town of Snowflake. It was a story out of the Arizona Republic. Should be good for our Patreon discussion. So in the meantime, listeners, if you have any questions or comments, you can reach out at contact@thisweekendmormons.com. You can go to the Facebook page. We're trying to be a lot more active on our Facebook page. Mm-hmm. You can go to the Instagram page, which we're also trying to be more active on the Instagram page.
And don't forget to tell us about your hymns this week.
Yes.
That's your homework.
I will put that up on Facebook. Probably Sunday I'll put that up on Facebook and say, hey,
Sunday night.
New hymns, please comment if your ward sung new hymns today. And then, of course, there's the TWiM Sisters Instagram, and I will put our favorite things up there on the TWiM Sisters Instagram.
Hey, you should put that Postum recipe up too.
Oh, that is a really good idea. I will put the Postum recipe up on the TWiM Sisters Instagram because Postum, thank you very much. This vanilla drink, I've been drinking it all throughout the show. Very good. So
I'm on board.
Postum, thank you very much for your support. And finally, if you'd like to throw a few bucks a month, you can become a Patreon subscriber for as little as $2 or $3 a month, and you will get access to the episodes before anybody else does, as well as exclusive Patreon content. So, listeners, thank you very much.
Thanks for listening.